Hello everybody. In the previous video we have discussed about the relationship between total utility and marginal utility. Now in this video we will discuss law of diminishing marginal utility. In short, it is also called as law of DMU. So in this we are going to discuss meaning, assumptions, schedule, graph and exceptions of the law. So let us begin with the meaning. So this law was basically given by Professor Alfred Marshall. So according to Alfred Marshall, the law is the additional benefit which a person derives from a given increase of his stock of a thing diminishes with every increase in stock that he already has. So this means that as the person consumes more and more, the marginal utility keeps on falling. So in this definition, the additional benefit, this additional benefit means the marginal utility, because what is the meaning of marginal utility? Marginal utility is the additional benefit. So this is the marginal utility which you get. It keeps on falling, it keeps on diminishing with the every increase that you do in your stock. So this is the basic meaning of the diminishing marginal utility. Here also I have written the law of diminishing marginal utility states the marginal utility gradually decreases with the level of consumption. So as you keep on consuming more and more, the marginal utility will keep on falling. So same thing I have explained with the help of an example. So suppose if the consumer is consuming 6 apple one after the other, so there is a continuous consumption, there is no time gap between the two consumption. The consumption of apple is taking place immediately one after the other. So as the consumer is consuming first apple, so first apple the consumer will very much enjoy, and the consumer will say yes, it's a yummy, this is really good. But when the consumer consumes the second apple, he's okay with it, he's fine with it, okay fine, no problem, he's ready to consume it. But if the consumer is asked to consume the third apple, so at the third consumption consumer is fully satisfied, consumer doesn't want to eat any more apple, and he says it's enough, doesn't want to eat any more. But as the consumer consumes the next apple, so now at this point consumer will say, I am hating it now, I don't want to eat any more apple. So it happens with all of us, with everybody. As you keep on consuming more and more, the marginal utility will keep on decreasing. So this is what the example is telling us. This example is very clearly explaining us the law of DMU. As you keep on consuming more and more, the marginal utility will keep on diminishing. So now before we begin with the main law of DMU, let us first discuss the assumptions of the law, because any law is incomplete without the assumption. So here are the few assumptions. These assumptions the law of DMU is making. If these assumptions are not there, then the law is not possible. So let us begin with the first assumption. First assumption is rational consumer. The consumer is a rational human being. Here it means that the consumer is a normal human being. He always tries to get maximum satisfaction from any given commodity. So the law is applicable, the law of DMU is applicable only in case of rational consumer. So consumer should be able to think rationally and always think to satisfy maximum want. Next is cardinal measurement. Cardinal measurement is, we assume that the utility can be measured in terms of numbers. It is possible that we can measure utility in terms of numbers, but actually we all know that it is, in reality it is not possible to measure utility in terms of number. But we assume, this is the assumption, we assume that it is possible to measure utility in terms of numbers. Then the next one is homogeneity. Homogeneity is all the consumptions that we are doing it, all the commodities that we are consuming it should be uniform. The consumer should consume uniform commodities. So here the meaning of homogeneity is homogeneous is similar. All the commodities that the consumer is consuming should be similar, because if the commodities are not similar, if the commodities are not uniform, then the marginal utility will not fall. So here the example is given: if you are consuming a ice cream, first ice cream which is without any toppings, without any nuts, then what happens? The first commodity, the first ice cream is very very simple, without any nuts and toppings. And when you're consuming the second ice cream is full of nuts and toppings. So then here you will experience more marginal utility from the second ice cream as compared to the first one. So in this case, the goods that the consumer is consuming, the ice cream that the consumer is consuming, is not homogeneous. It should be homogeneous in order to experience the law of DMU. Okay, so now we move on to next. Next is continuous consumption. So the consumption that we are doing should be continuous without any time gap. If you are consuming first ice cream in the morning, second ice cream in the evening, then what happens? There is a lot of time gap between the two consumptions, and then you may not experience the diminishing marginal utility. You will say, okay, I can eat second ice cream in the evening with the same level of utility. So then to experience law of DMU, the consumption should be continuous. Okay, so next is consumption of reasonable quantity. The quantities that you are consuming should be of reasonable size. It should not be too small or too big. Okay, so if you are consuming, let's say here example is given, instead of a glass of water, you are consuming a spoonful of water. So a spoonful of water, with the consumption of the spoonful of water, the marginal utility will not decrease or decline. Why? Because when you're consuming first spoon of water, second spoon of water, third spoon of water, here what is happening? You are not getting the satisfaction level which you wanted. Okay, your utility, your satisfaction will be satisfied only with the glass of water. So if you are consuming first glass of water, second glass of water, third glass of water, in this case you will experience the diminishing marginal utility. So the point over here is the consumption should be of a reasonable size. It should not be too big or too small. Next is constancy. That means the taste, income, habit, fashion, etc. of the consumer should remain constant. It should not change, because if it changes, again we know that the marginal utility will not decrease. Next, we move on to divisibility. Divisibility says that the goods should be divided into small quantities so that you can consume it one after the other. Next is single want. Single want means the one single commodity should satisfy only one want. It should not satisfy multiple want. For example, if you are using milk should be consumed only if suppose you are consuming it in the form of curd. So you should be consuming in the form of curd itself. You should not be consuming milk in different forms. Like if you are consuming milk in the form of, first consumption is in the form of curd, second consumption is in the form of ice cream, third consumption is in the form of tea. So in this case your marginal utility will not fall, because you are consuming one commodity into different forms. Okay, you are one single commodity is satisfying many want. So in this case your marginal utility will not decrease. So the assumption is it should be used only for one want. And the last point is the marginal utility of money should remain constant. We know that the marginal utility of money it never decreases. Marginal utility of money never decreases, but we assume that it should remain constant. Okay, so so after assumptions, now we will start with the law of DMU. The law starts with the schedule. Here you can see the schedule of the diminishing marginal utility. Here you have two columns: units of consumption and the marginal utility. These are the units of consumption and the marginal utility. So here in this table you can see, here this is the example of the apple we have taken. When the consumer is consuming one apple, the marginal utility that he is getting is 20 utils. Utility is measured in terms of utils, so we will say utils, 20 utils. From the second consumption, it is 15 utils. So you can see, as the consumer is consuming more and more, the marginal utility is continuously falling. So at this point, the marginal utility becomes zero. That means at this point the consumer is fully satisfied, and after this point, if he consumes more, the marginal utility will become negative. So this utility will convert into disutility. Okay, so now the same thing here we have explained with the help of the graph. So you can see over here, as at the first unit of consumption of apple, it is 20. Then as from second consumption, it is 15. Then from the third one, it is 10, and fourth is 5, and at the fifth consumption, the marginal utility becomes 0, and afterwards it starts falling. It becomes negative. So you can see here we are getting a downward sloping marginal utility curve. Till this point it is positive. It is continuously falling. Till this point it is positive. At this point it becomes 0, and afterwards it becomes negative. So this means that as the consumer consumes more and more unit of a commodity, the marginal utility keeps on falling. So this was our law of DMU. Now we quickly move on to the exceptions. There are several exceptions of the law. That means the exceptions where the law of DMU is not applicable. The law of DMU is not applicable in these cases: in cases of hobbies, like reading book. So as you keep on reading book, if you like any book, you keep on reading book again and again. Okay, so here the marginal utility will not fall. So same way, like collection of coins, in this case also the marginal utility will not fall. Money is excluded. We are never satisfied with money, so the marginal utility of money can never fall. So money is excluded. And intoxicated, like the habitual goods, that means drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, etc. So the people who consume drugs or alcohol, they will keep on consuming again and again. Their marginal utility is it will never decrease, or it will never go in negative. They won't say, no, I don't want to eat or I don't want to drink any more alcohol. So they will keep on consuming more and more. So these are certain points where the law of DMU is not applicable. That means the law doesn't hold true. That means the marginal utility will not fall. So now we are done with our law of DMU. In next video we will discuss the relationship between marginal utility and price. So till then, please like and subscribe for the latest videos. Thank you so much.